Hello, my beautiful bookish besties. Today we're going to be going over my 2024 reading goals because with every new year comes a new reading resolution, and these are mine. These are going to be the goals that I haven't talked about yet in other videos. I've already talked about the popular series that I want to get around to in 2024, so I'm not going to be talking about those here. These are not my only goals for the new year. These are just some of them. So if you watch this video and get to the end thinking, wait, I thought she was going to read Third of Glass and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder this year, I am. But since I've already talked about those in other videos, I'm not going to be focusing on them here, okay? Okay. By the end of the year, I want to have read at least 200 books. I know that seems like a lot to most people, and it kind of is, but last year, my reading goal was only 100, and I ended up doubling that. It wasn't a challenge to read 100 books, and I do want my reading challenge to actually be a challenge. I don't want to set my goal to a low number and then easily surpass it in June, because I feel like that's boring for me. I've heard the argument that people shouldn't make a reading challenge because that puts stress on the reader, and reading is just supposed to be for fun. But for me personally, I get bored when I'm not challenging myself to read more than I think I can, and that's for all activities. I just like challenging myself, otherwise I get bored. And I know that's for some people, it's the opposite, and challenges overwhelm them and make them dislike reading. And I get that. Whatever you want to read and however you want to read are completely up to the individual reader, and you should all do whatever you want to do to make you happy, however you want to read. For me, though, reading challenges make me happy, so I'm going to challenge myself to read 200 books this year. If your number is nowhere near here, that's fine. If your goal is one book, good for you. Read however many books you want to read. Don't compare your goals to someone else's. One of my primary goals for this new year is to diversify my reading. I want to read from more authors of color. I realized as I was rounding up my top 23 books of 2023 that I read predominantly books written by white women about white characters. So my New Year's resolution is going to be to make a conscious effort to read more diverse reads next year. Recently, I've been reading up on racism in the publishing industry, and it's really opened my eyes. I think readers should be making more of an effort to discover books by people of color because it's important to amplify their voices as they are often silenced even today. These are some of the people of color that I haven't read from yet that I am interested in reading from in 2024. Alexandra House is a Black indie author who writes Black love stories. On top of wanting to support more people of color, I also want to support more independently published authors, so I definitely want to read from her. She has one book called Holding that is lovers to enemies lovers, and I love that trope, so I'm definitely going to be checking that one out soon. Jessie Q. Sutanto is a Chinese-Indonesian author. She wrote Dial A for Aunties and Vera Wrong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. Both sound pretty good. And then Tomi Adeyemi is a Nigerian-American author. She wrote the Legacy of Orisha trilogy, which has been on my radar for over a year, but I feel like I'm actually going to read it this year. I feel like I'm more inclined to read it in 2024 because the third book of the trilogy is being published this year, and I won't have to wait months for the last book. These are some other people of color that I'm interested in reading from this year. Morgan Rogers is another Black author. She wrote Honey Girl. I have no idea what that book is about, but it's calling me for some reason. I think I'm just going to go in blind and read it. Annika Sharma is an Indian-American author. She wrote a rom-com titled Sugar Spice and Can't Play Nice that I really want to read. It looks really fun and cute. And Lauren Kung Jessen is a mixed-race Chinese author. She wrote Lunar Love, which, if I'm not mistaken, is an enemies lovers book, and I'm always down to read an enemies lovers book, so I'll go pick that up at the library. I'm going to be reading from more people of color authors than just these 6, but these are the ones that are at the top of my list. Another one of my goals is to get back into reading historical romances. I used to read them all the time, and I enjoyed them most of the time, but this last year, I focused a lot on reading the most hyped up books. I caved a lot to book talk, and since historical romances never really get too popular, I slowly stopped reading them. I miss them, though. There are some amazing historical romances out there, and I don't want to be missing out on those books. These are 3 of the ones that are on my radar. The Devil to Pay by Casey Bateman I want to read because she wrote my favorite historical romance ever, which is A Reckless Match. I also want to read a Judith McNaught book because whenever I hear people talking about historical romances, they're either talking about her or Lisa Kleypas or Tessa Dare. Popular authors are usually popular for a reason, so I want to give her books a chance and see if I like them. I also want to read A Heaven Won Supper by Lisa Kleypas. I've read one Lisa Kleypas book before and I loved it, so I want to try another one by her. Going along that same idea, I want to read more underrated books like I used to. I miss finding my own books, not just taking recommendations from Book Talk. Don't get me wrong, Book Talk books are great. I love them, and I like that I can fangirl with other people about them because there's a massive fan base for them. But there are incredible underrated books out there. Some of my favorite books ever have less than 5,000 reads on Goodreads. And I don't want to miss out on those books because I'm taking the easy way out and only reading books that are constantly shoved in my face. So I did some digging on the deep dark web, and I found these 3 books. They all have less than 1,000 ratings, and they all seem pretty good. Hit by Mallory Hart is a slow burn, enemies lovers Irish mafia romance. I also want to read Kidnapped at Christmas by Samantha Holt. It seems like a really fun time. It's about a fake kidnapping. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds like a fun time. I feel like there's going to be wild shenanigans in this. So when I want a book that'll make me laugh, this will be the one. Also, the hero is apparently broody, and broody men are my kryptonite. I also want to read Loaded by Roxy Noir. Funnily enough, Loaded is also about a kidnapping gone wrong. I'm in a weird mood today. Another one of my big goals for the new reading year is to step out of my genre comfort zone. I only read a couple books out of my comfort zone last year. This year I want to focus on it a little more. Like, I'm still going to be reading predominantly romances and fantasies because that's what I love and that's what makes me love reading. But I do want to explore a little bit, and I'm going to be exploring thrillers. I've never really been a thriller girly, but I found some really great thrillers last year that made me want to explore the genre a little more. You can all thank Riley Sager for this change. I read Lock Every Door by him this summer, and it has sparked something inside of me. There are some hidden gems in this genre, and I want to find them. I want to be thrilled. These are three of the thrillers that I definitely want to read in 2024. The Silent Patient, because my sister raves about this book and I trust her judgment. Only If You're Lucky hasn't even come out yet, but I read the blurb and I was intrigued. So I added it to my TBR. I don't even remember what the blurb said, so I can't tell you. I just remember it sounded like a fun time and I want to read it. And The Housemaid doesn't even just represent The Housemaid, it represents all of freaking McFadden's books. I want to read her entire backlist this year. I read The Coworker by her and I also read a short story by her. And I just thought she did a really great job with developing interesting characters in The Coworker, and I liked her fast-paced, kind of humorous writing style. Everyone says The Housemaid is her best one, so I definitely want to read that. And she has a new book coming out this year called The Teacher that also sounds really good. Almost all her books are available on Hoopla, and I favorited all of them without even reading the blurbs of most of them. That's how much I trust this woman. I really like her writing, as you can tell. Stepping out of my genre comfort zone means reading science fiction. I've always been intimidated by the genre. It's probably the genre I'm most intimidated by because science was always my worst subject in school, and I feel like if I try to read a sci-fi book, I'm just going to be confused the entire time. And if the big book is making me feel stupid, I'm not going to enjoy it. But I won't know unless I try. I need to get over this fear and at least try to read them. If I try and I hate it, I can go back to reading my cute little fluffy romance books. But I want to at least try. I don't want to live in fear of books. Like, that's ridiculous. There's no harm in trying. So I did some research and I found 3 sci-fi books that all look interesting or that I want to try just because everyone hypes them up so much. So Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. The pink cover is what drew me in. I love pink. I saw the cover and then I read the blurb and I was intrigued. It's about the relationship between an AI woman and a human man. It sounds really interesting. I'm curious to see what the author does with this story. I feel like there are a lot of ways this could go. I also want to read Womb City by Flotlo Samase. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. This is the one I'm most excited for out of the books on this list. Like, they're all kind of interesting, but this one really got me. This is a debut novel that's coming out later this year. It's set in a dystopian Africa where men can control women's bodies because they have a microchip in their brain that allows them to do this. It sounds so interesting and so heartbreaking. I feel like it's going to be a feminist read that will touch on some very important topics. It sounds really good. I also want to read In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune for no other reason other than the fact that it won the Goodreads Awards for Best Science Fiction. I don't know what it's about, but if this book is the most popular amongst sci-fi fans, I want to give it a try. I also want to try to read some classics. This is also really out of my comfort zone. Classics are intimidating to me because if you say you don't like a certain classic, I feel like people get very passive aggressive and mean, and I don't want to deal with that. But you know what? I've decided that those comments are not going to stop me. I don't even get comments on these videos, so it really should not matter. If I want to try classics, I'm going to do that. If I don't like them, it is what it is. There's no shame in that. Not every book is going to work for every person, and people should understand that not everyone's going to like every single classic. I hate how people get passive aggressive about them. So these are the ones that I own, so I'm prioritizing reading these this year. I want to read Emily Bronte and Jane Austen. From Jane Austen, I want to read Pride and Prejudice because it's the OG enemies lovers book and that's my favorite trope. And I also want to read Emma by her. I don't have that one, but I know it's about this rich, spoiled girl, and I love reading about spoiled characters for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's kind of funny how out of touch they are, and there's always room for character development with characters like that, so I usually like the books. I also want to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I own it, and it's really short, so I could probably read it in a day and go back to reading my comforting romance books. Yay! And then I also want to explore the nonfiction genre a little bit. I just want to read a little more nonfiction. I only read 2 nonfiction books in 2023 out of the 203 books I read. I never really gravitate towards these books because I like to be in Fantasyland when I read, but I came across this book called Knife by Salman Rushdie. It's a nonfiction book about this man who was attacked and lost the use of his eye and hand because of it. The book is about his trauma and recovery, and I really want to read it. And that's not like me at all, because so, like I said, I never really gravitate towards nonfiction books, but who knows? Maybe I'm entering my nonfiction era. This is the only nonfiction book that is really standing out to me right now, so it's the only one I'm going to put on my TBR. But I might make an effort to try some other ones later on in the year. We'll see how this one goes inside. And this is my last goal of the year. So to recap, I want to step out of my genre comfort zone. I want to find underrated books, and I want to make more of an effort to find BIPOC authors to read from. We'll see how much I stick to all of this. I'll see you all next time.